we are going to be talking about my last wrap-up video for 2023, which is my stats and superlatives video that I've started doing the last few years. This is where I take a look back at what I did in reading for 2023, and we talk about it by the numbers, and then we talk about it from the heart. So the quantitative and the qualitative, the numbers being the stats, and the qualitative, the heart, being some superlatives. So I actually have all of my stuff over here. I think what I'll do is I'll go over here and look at the stats, and then you'll be able to see the images on the screen. I'll do like a picture-in-picture. Anyway, we're gonna do it that way because that way I can talk about it with you as I'm looking at it, if that makes sense. So to the spreadsheets. Oh, and I'll timestamp below if you don't care about stats and just want to get to the superlatives. Check out the timestamps below if you want to skip ahead. Okay, so we're gonna start with some statistics. Oh man, where to even start? So maybe let's start with overall reading for this year. Start there, and we'll do a comparison year over year as well, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So overall, I read 274 books in 2023 and a total of 86,935 pages. This is slightly less than 2022, where I read 287 books and 88,804 pages, but that's like very close in the scheme of things. And one thing I'm noticing is that as time goes on and I settle into kind of my adult reading habits and my combined with the fact that I'm on BookTube, I think I comfortably read about between 250 and 300 books pretty consistently. The outlier since I started BookTube was 2020, where I read 345 books that year, but that was because it was the pandemic, basically. Yeah, I think pretty comfortably I'm reading 250 to 300 range. In terms of total pages, though, that's where I have more variability. So in 2020, obviously, I had the most pages read because I had the most books. But other than that, it kind of has varied quite a bit until the last couple of years. So even in 2020, even though I read a lot more number of books, the pages weren't that different than what I'm reading now because I'm reading bigger books. Anyway, all that to say, I think in my head, I can mentally kind of budget about 250 books a year now. So that's kind of good to know / interesting to see. I'll come back to some demographic things. Let's talk about genre. So genre was a pretty typical mix for me. I think as with last year, my biggest genre was mystery thriller. So 2 years in a row, mystery thriller is my biggest genre. Before that, it has been speculative romance and other romance, but it's I'm pretty consistently either romance or mystery. And that makes sense because I am a palate cleansy kind of person. I need palate cleansers to keep my momentum up, and mystery and some form of romance tend to do that for me. Plus, I had a bunch of projects this year reading a mystery thriller, so that was definitely the biggest genre, followed by speculative romance, followed by fantasy, which I think has been the case the last couple of years. So that makes sense. That's where kind of I spend a lot of my reading time, but as you can see, there's certainly other genres in the mix as well. I do tend to be an omnivore, so a little bit of everything. My least read genre this year was sci-fi, which is kind of funny to me. I guess I just didn't, there weren't a lot, I think I read sci-fi more when there's something that's enticed me, there's been a big book that has come out, or I read a good amount of sci-fi-ish type novellas, I think. I don't know, where do I read my sci-fi? Maybe I need to have some existential crisis around that. But anyway, that was my least read this year, so there you go. In terms of where I got my books from, pretty similar mix. I don't think that's very interesting. I did a very good job in terms of my TBR this year, reading from things that I own. So I think that is a good trend, though I do consistently use Kindle Unlimited and the library quite a bit for especially ebooks. I read almost exactly the same number of frontlist titles this year as I did last year. So last year I read 114 books that were released in that year, and this year I read 115 books, and that is too much. And you guys will be seeing, I don't think you've seen it yet, but in my 2024 goals, I am very purposely going to make sure that I start mixing things up again, because I'm just reading too much frontlist, especially considering that I am on record as saying I don't think that there's like a lot of great front list happening right now. Like that's too harsh, but like the volume, the number of books that I'm like super excited about coming out in a given year does not match this number. Now I will say, so long as I am a Kindle Unlimited sci-fi romance palette cleansing kind of girly, I'm always going to have a lot of books in the current year because I just am. But in terms of like arcs, for example, we'll get there, but I had, I think, nearly 60 arcs that I read, and that's not including things that I pre-ordered. Like, I read a lot of front list, some of which was great, but a lot of which was just like mid. So we'll see. But that is going to change next year, I hope. But as you can see, I'm very weighted to the front list, and I'm going to try my darndest to force myself to read what I already own next year and in 2024, and to make some progress there. So the total amount of money I spent this year on books was $994, and I had to pay for 28% of my books. So it means that my average cost per book was $12.91. So the caveat here, guys, always keep in mind that booktubers, especially ones who have, you know, like over 10,000 subscribers, like are making a little bit of money from their channel. If they have a Patreon, if they have channel members, also they get to write off some books for tax reasons. So like, I am well aware that that's a lot of money, and I do not spend money on books that I am not making from the channel. Like, that is a very black and white rule. The channel has to pay for itself, and it also has to pay for my budget. So keep that in mind. But I do think it's good to provide some transparency there, because, you know, you see people with like brand new hardbacks and whatever, and like those things cost money, and I think it's healthy for us to acknowledge that. But I also consider it a great privilege that I get to like be a patron of books, because yeah, I love them and I want people to make money from them, and I'm happy to be a part of helping them make money on them. Rating wise, okay, let's see how we did. Slightly worse than last year, but if I'm looking at my, okay, so sorry, let me say the words. This year my average was 3.43, let's say. If I look at my average from the last 3 years, it is nearly an identical average rating. In 2022, it was 3.45, and in 2021, it was 3.46. So I am slightly going down year over year, but that is a marked increase from where it was from really from 2011 through 2020. It was really more in the like 3.1 range. So I would say in the last 3 years, I have really honed in on what I like in books, and I'm pretty good at picking things that I like, DNFing early and often when it's something that I do not like. So I think because of that, I have fewer things that get counted as an actual DNF, because I really only count something as a DNF if I made enough progress in it. Like, if I got to the, let's say, 30, 40, 50% mark and I gave up, I will actually count it in my book count. But if I don't get that far, I'll just bail early. So I think because I do that more often, I'm not getting through books that I'm not interested in. And as I, you know, continue to evolve in my reading taste, I'm just getting better and better at picking things I actually enjoy reading and want to finish. My most frequently given rating is a 3.5, which is a B+, so I feel like that's pretty great. And I do feel like, let me look at the distribution here. Yeah, I would say my feeling is correct. It's not that I had a ton of books I didn't like, it's just that I had a lot of 3 and 3.5s, and not as many 4.5s. So that looks, you know, now that I'm looking at this year over year, the difference of why this did not feel like as good of a reading year is because I had more, like as a percentage, I had more 3, 3.5, and 4s than I did 4.5s and 5s. So I think that just, like, there weren't as many standouts. There were a lot of really good things, and actually there were fewer, am I correct? There were fewer things that I, like, disliked, that I gave a 2.5 or lower to, but I had fewer lows, but I also had fewer highs. So that's, I think, part of why it felt like a very mid-year. And then one trend that I'm noticing, especially now that like I've said, I hibernate like a little baby bear during the winter months because there's a lot of viruses and whatnot going around, and I'm immunocompromised, so I'd try to stick indoors or stick close to home. And like from, let's say, November through April-ish, I'm consistently reading around 25-ish books, like 25 to 30 books. And then from in the warmer months, when I make more of my plans, I'm reading around like between 15 to 20-ish books. So that seems to be a consistent pattern that's emerging. The most books I read in a month was in January. I read 31 books. And then the least books I read in a month was in October. I read 17. And I think that was, I had some life stuff happening then. So with all that being said, I do think I'm kind of settling into some patterns there. And then demographic-wise, so I did finally break the 20% mark for the first time in a decade on percentage of books by not women. So either neither, because it's like multiple authors or non-binary authors, or by men. And I had 21%, which was, I was hoping I could break 20% this year, and I did. So that's exciting. Trying to mix it up a little bit. But I just read a lot from women, guys. But I increased that from last year. It was at 18%. The previous year was 14%. So I would love to get to like a quarter. Maybe that can be this coming year's, theoretical goal. I actually read fewer audiobooks this year than I did the previous year, and I was trying to read more because pre-pandemic I was consistently reading between 15 to 20% of my books in audio. And this year I only read 5% of what I read in audio, just because when I'm working from home, I just don't have as many opportunities to listen to audiobooks. And I miss that because I enjoy them, but I only read 15 this year, which was 5% of my reading. And then in terms of not like me, which is I try to not get too detailed in my kind of tracking of diversity rep, just because I think for me it can start to feel a little bingo cardish or like a little icky sometimes. So I just try to have a bucket category of not like me. This either author or main character was meaningfully not like me in a major way, because I find by doing that it helps me make sure that I'm reading from a variety of perspectives, and also just like keeping things fresh, because it gets boring if you're just reading about people like you all the time. So this year I hit 52%, which was great. My goal every year is for it to be 50-50, as likely to read something that is like me as not like me, and that has been consistent for the last 3 years. 2021 52, 2022 53, and this year 52. So that seems to be hovering right about there. Seems to be about right. And then, I read 8% of what I read was either YA or middle grade. A little down from last year, but seems like it might be kind of the average is right there around 10%. Especially always looking for a good middle grade. Series-wise, we're looking at about 58.8% of the books I read were in series, so that's like roughly 60% in series and 40% standalone. I mean, that sounds right. I think, I don't know, I guess that sounds right both from like the reality, that doesn't surprise me, but I guess that's also about what I would want or expect, because I do read in a lot of genres that lend themselves to series, like SFF definitely does, and romance definitely does, as well as mystery. So all three of those definitely have a lot of series in them, so it makes sense to me that a good chunk of my reading would end up being in a series. And then new to me author was 37% and repeat author was 63%. I probably would like to try a little bit more new author stuff, so I don't know that I have a specific goal for that or metric, but probably closer to like 45, 55, I would say ideally, but you know, I don't really get too turned around on that one. I say like, oh, I'm really casual about it as I have this entire freaking spreadsheet. I'm not casual about any of these things. Okay, so then let's look at reading Roberts and arcs before we talk about my overall collection. Okay, so for arcs, I have this year's data and year-over-year data. So I, every year, say I'm going to read fewer advanced reader copies. And since I started tracking this, in 2020 and 2021, I read 56 books. 2022, I read 54, and this year I read 55. It's almost the exact same every year. I have a goal that I will talk about in my 2024 goals to actually reduce this, because I truly do want to get this down. But I'm consistently reading right around 55 books that are advanced reader copies every year. My average rating for the arcs that I read was a 3.63, which is like a little over a B+. To be fair, that is higher than the overall rating for the year, because my overall rating was like 4.3 or 3.43. So 0.2 higher. But when you think about it in the scheme of things, it's like not that high. So I want to read less of that and more of things that I already have heard about or people have already read and know are good. So my goal is to read less arcs, and hopefully I will be successful in that. But for the ones I enjoyed what I read in advanced copies this year. So my highest rated arc of the year was Mammoths at the Gate by Niveau. I gave that a 5-star, and that was my only 5-star for arcs that I gave out. But I did give out 7 4.5s to things with advanced reader copies. 8 of the 55 I gave 4.5 or a 5, so I guess that's actually not a it's a pretty good hit rate. Genre-wise, this year SFF was definitely my biggest, which is in contrast to last year where almost half of my arcs were mystery thriller. So that is definitely a big change year over year. Though I will say mystery thriller was my second biggest. So so about 35% of my arcs were SFF, and then about 25% were mystery thrillers. So those are definitely my two biggest ones. Not a bad year for advanced reader copy reading, but I am just trying my darndest to try to get that down a little. Let's talk about reading Roberts. So my goal, if you don't know, is to read every single book that Nora Roberts has ever published. As of this year, I'm counting 273 of those. To be fair, some of those are like novellas or short stories or whatever, but I'm just calling it books. So 273 works, maybe is the way to say that. And at the beginning of the year, I was only counting 267. Oh, I guess that's because she had the 4 that came out this year, plus I have a couple already in this sheet that are going to come out next year because they're available as advanced copies. But anyway, so at the beginning of the year, she had 267 I was trying to read. The end of the year, it's 273. At the beginning of the year, I had 108 that I had read and 159 that I had not. And by the end of the year, I have read 133 and I've not read 140. So I am currently at 48.72% read. So I was hoping I was going to get to 50-50. I'm not quite, but I am almost at 50% read. So that's exciting. And my goal for next year is to once again read 2 books a month. So that would be 24. So that would definitely put me over the 50% mark. Maybe I'll try to read more. We'll see how that goes. I will say that the average rating is slowly but surely going down year over year. When I started tracking this, the average rating was a 3.6, and as of now it's a 3.28. That is because she has a ton of old category romances, and I very rarely give those more than a 3-star. I have had some people say, like, if you don't like them, why are you reading them? It's the fun of being a completionist. And also, a 3-star to me isn't bad. I pick those up when I need a palate cleanse, and a 3-star for a palate cleanse is perfectly fine. I love Nora Roberts' writing and her authorial voice. So even if I don't love it, I usually enjoy it well enough to give it a 3-star. And if it's really bad, then I'll DNF it, which I have done before, and that also brings the rating down. So anyway, we're getting there slowly but surely. I think I will cross the 50% threshold this year. And what else can I tell you about this? Of the 140 books, I own 65 of them, so that's 46.43%. So either between my collection or the library, we'll get there, but I have about half of what I still need to read on hand, ready to go. And then the last thing for stats is I thought we could talk about some collection things, specifically the additions to my TBR, which I always like to tell you guys about because it gives me some accountability. I started the year with 3,195 books in my collection, and I'm ending the year at 3,371. I will say I am about to do a big clean out of a bunch of ebooks that I got 10 years ago when I had no money, but was willing to hunt out deals to get free ebooks. I expect that next year this number is going to go down. So my overall collection went up by a little over 200 books. Some of those are books that I'd already read, so those aren't necessarily a net addition to my TBR. Those are just like the number of books I have. Of those books, the ones I have in physical form are 1,356. So if you ever wonder how many books I've got floating around this house, that's how many I have in physical form. The rest are ebooks or audiobook. The only other big thing I'll mention for my collection is just the thing that I always tell you guys about whenever we do hauls, though those are going to change in 2024. You'll hear more about that in the 2024 goals. But I added, the total number of books that I added to my TBR this year was 196 books. But the total that I removed from my TBR, either because I read them or I unhauled them without reading them, was 237 books, which means that I am ending the year negative 41 books. I am so proud of this. I can't even begin to tell you. This is the biggest net drop I've had ever since I've been tracking this. And here's hoping that next year is the same or better, because I am loving this feeling, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get through the books, trying to get through the noise, to get back to like the books that are fresh and that I'm excited about. So that is the biggest thing from collections. And I'm so proud. Okay, so those are all the stats I think I wanted to tell you about. Now, let me run through my superlatives. So this is sort of like the award show bit. The best writing of the year I'm going to give to Anthony Trollope, and that is because I have been falling in love with him over the last couple years as I've been reading the Chronicles of Barset and the Chronicles of Barsetshire. It is such a wonderful series. I don't feel like we have a ton of these kind of Victorian literature series like that. And his writing is just it's very readable to the modern ear. And it's also just delightful. Like, he always has these fun asides to the audience. And he just has like such a funny or sort of like incisive point of view on his characters. So I love his writing, and I definitely fell more in love with it this year. So best writing of the year I'll give to him. Then I always do most overhyped, most correctly hyped, and most underhyped. Overhyped, I'm going to give to Verity. I picked that one as my main like big book on bookish internet that I was going to read because it was so hyped, and it was my least favorite book of the year. So I think definitionally it has to be the most overhyped. Correctly hyped, I'm going to give to the other book I read in that vlog, which was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This I had heard was just like super cute and delightful, and I am happy to report that that is very true. Everybody has talked about how delightful this series is, how sweet it is, how cute it is, and I thought it might be overhyped, but I completely see why people love this so much. It really captures that feeling of young love really, really well. It's just very, like, I want to say wholesome, but I don't mean that in a way of like infantilizing them, but just like that it feels like it's nostalgic. Maybe that's it. If you're an adult reader of this, I think it will feel very nostalgic, and that's the sort of like coziness of it. yeah, I don't know. They're super cute. So I can see why people love that so much. It's very sweet. Underhyped, I picked What the Hex by Jessica Clare just because I think because she's not using the same name she does as Ruby Dixon, people don't know that she has this great paranormal romance duology out there that they probably would really like if they like Ruby Dixon. So just telling you guys, if you like Ruby Dixon, definitely check out What the Hex and Go Hex Yourself, I think is the first one. So underhyped there. Underhyped series, I feel like I'm just like being repetitive at this point, but I'm gonna say Seven Brides for Seven Alien Brothers. What can I tell you? I really love this series and I'm the only one who's hyping it up, so I'm just gonna continue to do that until more of you read it, which a lot of you have, and you've also reported back, like, yes, this was exactly what I was looking for, like a nice palate cleanse, a nice little brain break. They're great. So yeah, that's my underhyped series. And then favorite main character, I decided to go with Cleric Chi from Mammoths at the Gate, who I've always loved, but just like my love for them just grew exponentially in Mammoths at the Gate, and seeing where they're from and their history, it was just amazing. And then I would say my favorite side character was Bee from the Fitz and the Fool series from Robin Hobb. This is the last trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings, and I can't really tell you anything about Bee, but if you know, you know. And that is who I'm going to say for now as a side character. And if we ever actually do get an additional series in that world, I think that character will become a main character. And then favorite ensemble, I had to give to the Thursday Murder Club. The Last Double to Die was definitely my favorite, but all of them are just great. It's so good. I really recommend those as audio in particular. Biggest disappointment of books, I actually decided to go with In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Less so for me, because I gave it 3 stars. I don't think it was terrible, but it wasn't great. And I saw so many people who were so excited for that book be disappointed by it. And that just made me sad. Like people who, because I like TJ Klune, but I wouldn't say that I'm like a stan. And a lot of people are, and a lot of people were really disappointed. So I was like sad for them. Like they were really excited about that book, and I think it didn't really deliver what they were hoping it would. Getting into biggest accomplishments. So in terms of reading, I would say finishing up the Chronicles of Barsetshire. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make that happen, and I did at the very end of the year, so that was exciting. In terms of a video, my biggest accomplishment was doing the 2 big collabs I did at the beginning and end of the year. I had a couple others in the middle, but those 2 in particular were very big undertakings. So reading the Goodreads Choice Award winners of the last 10 years, and then reading all of the nominees. Both of those were very big reading projects and very big editing projects for me this year. And not that I did those perfectly, like there were some mistakes that really drive me crazy. But anyway, I'm proud of myself, like as like producing content. Those were 2 things I was very proud of. And then also starting a new podcast with my pal Jess Owens, which is Welcome to Our Open Tabs with Toot. We are having a great time. That's one of my favorite things I'm doing online these days, and it feels like an accomplishment because we had talked about it and we actually made it happen. So those are my biggest accomplishments. Biggest fail is actually recording the latest episode of Changeling Cast, because we did have a new release in the Side Changeling world this year, and I just never got my act together to actually record that video. But rest assured, I will do it before the next book. I'm going to record both of those episodes back to back. That was my biggest fail of 2023. And then favorite video, I had a few that I really liked what I did this year. I would say here's another accomplishment segueing into this. I finally gave myself permission to not have to post 2 videos every single week, every single year. I gave myself permission to stop. It kills me in the algorithm, which sucks, but now YouTube lets you hide what number your video is at, so I don't have to feel that pain as deeply. And that was like the best choice I could have made for my mental health, for my overall like work-life balance, and then also just like me staying interested in doing booktube, like longevity-wise, that was a good decision. So I'm proud of myself for doing that because it was very hard because I knew it would hurt me in the algorithm, and it did. But anyway, the things I did produce, I think I had very few videos this year that felt like filler to me, or like, ooh, I just need to get 2 videos up. I had very few of those, so that felt good. I was really liking what I produced this year. Live stream wise, my favorite one definitely was the Corinne discussion we had about who wrote the book Corinne. I did that with several other booktubers. I highly recommend it. They each actually ended up making a video about it on their own channels because they were so intrigued by it. So I really enjoyed that video. I really am glad I documented the process of going to the inn that Nora Roberts owns, and just because that was a great trip with my best friend. And then also making my Felicity Halloween costume, like trying sewing and doing those as vlogs. They don't do very well, but I really enjoyed making them. And I might do those again this year, we'll see. But I'm just glad I documented both of those, like for my own personal selfishness. And then if I was gonna say like one video that I pre-made, I would say probably that Japanese mystery video I did. I was really proud of, like, I really enjoyed the process of reading for it and trying to do a little bit of research on the history and understanding where the books I read fell into sort of that overall tradition. I'm far from an expert or scholar, but I felt like with the information I could find in English that was not, you know, behind a paywall, I felt like it was a pretty good video and I was proud of it and I had a really good time making it. So, yeah, those were my favorite videos. New favorite author, T. Kingfisher. Officially made it onto my favorite author list. I just consistently love the things she puts out, and she has such a big backlist, so I have so many things I'm going to get to enjoy for years to come. I think my new auto-buy author is going to be Richard Osman and Janice Hallett. Those are the two because I just think I love what they do, and I'm here for the ride. Like, whatever they put out, give it to me. Let's read it. Best debut, I'm going to give to The Bandit Queens by Parini Sharaf. It's not a perfect book, and I definitely think there are some criticisms that I could see of it, but I think the actual writing was really promising, and I think it was very impressive as a debut, in my opinion. So I would definitely give that for debut. And then best cover, I'm going to say is a tie between, because I think these are the two covers that I think are both very aesthetically pleasing, but also I just think capture the vibe of the book really well. One is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. I think when you look at that, you definitely can tell, like, this is an adventure, fantasy, fun time. And then Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy. I think you can definitely tell from that it's like a whimsical and a different kind of fantasy. So they're beautiful covers, but also I just think they're very evocative of the actual books. Like, they do a good job of giving you a sense of the book you're going to read. Those are my superlatives, guys, and those are my stats. And we have come to the end. We are finally here. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little trip down 2023 memory lane and enjoyed the summary. I definitely enjoy compiling these and talking about them. I just think it's fun. And it's just fun, I don't know, the more I have like year over year data and the more I like refine what I'm measuring, I don't know. I just find it edifying. I find it fun. And also I find it inspirational going into the new year to be able to like look at trends, like observe things about my reading and my reading patterns and habits, all of that. I find it helpful. And I know some of you guys are fellow number nerds and enjoy those as well. So with that being said, let me know what you thought about anything we talked about today. Let me know maybe what some of your biggest, superlatives of last year's reading were. And I think that'll do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!